Steps to let go of a hurt ego when you're rejected or broken up with an avoidant tendency X. Thank you. Okay, that's a great question. If your heart is broken, right, this segment's really going to be for you. When we are in the throes of heartbreak and we experience what I consider to be like attachment hunger, we usually desperately want a remedy that is going to help us get over the pain and forget about the ex, right? And, bonus points, if we could find some kind of method that's going to speed up that healing process in such a way that we'll never have to feel this kind of pain ever again. So if you can relate to that, then in this particular segment, I want to share some tips to help you get over a breakup. And this is particularly true if you struggle with anxious attachment or you feel particularly anxious as someone who has disorganized attachment, what I call spice of life attachment. Within this segment, I want you to be able to understand how attachment styles can affect our breakup behavior. I also want to share with you the specific struggles for anxious folks in particular, or if you're experiencing higher levels of anxiety around it. And so that you can feel more empowered to take control of your emotions, that you can develop a more positive outlook for yourself and your future relationships and feel more confident that you can handle breakups in the future, okay? Because we can't promise that you'll never have a breakup again and you'll never experience painful loss again, but what we can do is learn and understand that we have the tools to weather those things without falling apart completely, right? We can trust that about ourselves. And so we want to get to a place of having that trust confidently within ourselves. Also, if you are new to my community, welcome. My name is Briana MacWilliam, and I am a licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist with more than 15 years in the field, helping adults struggling with insecure attachment go from self-doubting to self-sovereign so they can attract the soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want. And I do this using a psycho-spiritual approach to creative arts interventions, which I call the MacWilliam method. The content on my YouTube channel is derived from my online courses, which you can learn more about through the link in the caption of this video. If you like what you see and hear and you want to learn more, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. I put out videos once a week, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. So let's dive into this topic. So how do attachment styles affect our breakup behavior? Again, there are a lot of factors that can impact how we respond to a breakup, not just attachment styles, also cultural factors, gender roles, our personality traits, and other forms of social support. I believe that attachment styles now have become a lot more popularly followed and understood because this is actually what belies a lot of what happens in our relationships. And the cultural conditioning and gender roles have kind of gotten layered on top of it. But as that becomes less stringent, we are starting to see that attachment styles may actually be some of the underlying issues here, right? So for example, in 2013, there was a research team, they conducted 2 studies, and it was a combined sample size of about 800 participants. And they wanted to look at how attachment styles impacted personal growth following romantic breakups. So now in the first study, they found that anxiety was indirectly associated with greater personal growth through heightened breakup stress, whereas avoidance was indirectly associated with lower personal growth because of an inhibited breakup distress, okay? So what does that mean? Well, it shows that there's a positive association of breakup stress with personal growth because of the enhanced habit of self-reflection and even brooding and rumination. So all that brooding and rumination you're doing that feels so awful now, believe it or not, that's actually serving you. And it may be speeding up your growth process. So so that's important to realize, not because one is better than the other, but because the process of healing and integration is going to be qualitatively different based on your inclinations. Okay. So your starting point is going to be a little bit different, but I would say luckily the tools are pretty much the same. Okay. Because the wound is a similar wound. We're just dealing with it in different ways. Okay. And of course, every individual's experience with a breakup is going to be unique. It's going to be influenced by a variety of factors, again, like personality traits, your social supports, cultural conditioning, and also the nature of the relationship itself, right? If that sounds intriguing to you, or if some of those facts and research studies resonate with you, just drop me a like or a thumbs up in the chat so I know there. And the next part I want to talk about maybe more explicitly is how anxious attachment affects a breakup. So individuals with anxious attachment style tend to rely pretty heavily on their romantic relationships to experience a sense of security, a sense of comfort and validation. They often fear abandonment, and they can have a constant need for reassurance from their partners. So as a result, breakups can be particularly difficult for someone who's an anxious open heart. And because of that, it can trigger intense feelings of fear or of loss. There is a profound grief experience going on for them. And so they might struggle with feelings of rejection, with abandonment, and the loss of the relationship. It can feel like a threat to their sense of self and well-being as a whole, okay? And so it is challenging to let go and move on, right? And they may be more likely to engage in behaviors like checking in on their ex or wanting to reconcile, even if it may not be in their best interest. So if that sounds like you, then I would encourage you to just go back and watch that segment we did on no contact, especially if your partner may have more of an avoidant attachment style. Their intense emotions can also lead to physical sensations in the body during a breakup because their nervous system is wired to be more reactive to stress and perceived threats. Okay, so research has shown that anxious attachment can be associated with heightened activity in the amygdala, which is the alarm bell of your survival brain. Okay, and this is the part that is responsible for processing emotions and triggering our fight or flight responses in the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, and so as a result, someone with an anxious attachment can feel more overwhelmed and physically drained during a breakup, right? And that can make it harder for them to have the resources to cope with the situation. It's also important for individuals with open-hearted attachment style to practice self-care and to seek those additional supports during this time to regulate their nervous system and manage their emotions. This is particularly true in the sense that you want to seek physical affection and comfort, because people with anxious attachment, in their epigenetic expression, they also tend to be dopamine seeking and oxytocin seeking. It's actually something that their brain needs and wants. So you want to think about cuddle buddies. You want to think about hot baths, sensory deprivation chambers, weighted heated blankets. You know, this is one of the biggest questions I get from anxious folks in a breakup. What about my need for sex? Or what about my need for hugs? Or what about my need for cuddles? And that's a profound need for open hearts. So you need to really put those supports in place, okay? So I want to give you a couple of steps, very simple steps to sort of wrap this up and round this out. So the first step is in a breakup for someone, particularly someone that has an anxious attachment style. You want to try to identify and validate your emotions. Okay, so really before we can start healing from a breakup, you have to recognize and validate your own emotions. So you might feel angry, sad, or hurt, all of the above, right? And you have to recognize that all of those feelings are valid, and it is essential to acknowledge them, right? Some people will say, oh, but they treated you poorly, so you shouldn't be upset about it, right? That's not helpful. And it invalidates your experience. So whatever your experience is, it's okay and it's valid. And it doesn't matter whether anybody else thinks so or not. You do, okay? Now, it's also important to realize, as I said before in another segment, that there are 4 crucial emotions that you will want to allow yourself to feel and to lean into so that you can more in the relationship and integrate that experience. And if you want to learn more about that, again, the video is called 4 Crucial Emotions You Cannot Bypass. It's on my YouTube channel. I'll include a link to that in the caption of this replay in the video. Now, the second step, we want to practice self-compassion. And this is different than self-improvement, okay? So, you know, the end of a relationship, it can make you feel like you're not good enough. And that can lead to a lot of self-image, negative self-image and negative self-talk, right? A negative self-image and negative self-talk. It's essential in this case that we practice self-compassion rather than pushing ourselves to be better, to self-improve, okay? Now, wanting to explore our potentials and take action towards unlocking those potentials is a wonderful thing, of course. But is it coming from a place of curiosity, inspiration, and alignment with your spirit? Or is it coming from a place where there's a critical inner voice that is treating you like a taskmaster, right? And so a useful way to conceptualize this is to think about the sad or the wounded parts as your inner child, okay? And to recognize the origins of where those negative stories might be coming from. And these negative stories might be a part that we might refer to as the inner critic. And the inner critic is always trying to keep the inner child in its place because, number one, it's afraid if the child gets out, it will cause havoc and put you in an unsafe situation. And number two, it doesn't think you can handle the feelings that the child holds. Okay, so if you really want to explore that more, I actually have a video series on my YouTube channel. And in that series about healing the inner child, healing the wounded inner child. And in that series, we talk much more explicitly about parts work. I'll put a link to that in the caption of the video as well. Now, thirdly, we want to work on reframing negative self-talk, right? So reframing involves changing the way that you view a situation or a thought about a situation and helps you to see it in a more positive way. So that means that you want to identify the negative self-talk that you are, that's going through your mind, kind of like a hamster wheel, and start to replace it with more flexible thoughts. So for example, I'm never going to be able to do this, right? We might reframe that thought into something like, well, I might not be able to do it yet, but with practice and effort, I can improve, right? Well, I don't know how to improve it. Well, I don't know how to improve it yet, but I do know how to find helpful people and resources to teach me how to improve that, right? I'm not good enough. Well, we might reframe that thinking to rejection is protection, and I'm glad the universe is making space for a truly aligned and compatible partner to come into my life, right? So that little shift and tweak in thinking can help you overcome those negative thoughts and build your self-esteem. Number 4, cut off contact with your ex, at least for a little while, okay? So in that other video, we talked about no contact and its value. So that kind of comes in here as well. You want to cut off contact at least for a little while because you want to give your nervous system some time to reset itself, okay? And most research says it, but it takes about 3 to 6 months for your nervous system to kind of recalibrate. This is especially true if you had a particularly profound attachment experience or attachment injury in your past. And also teach your nervous system new tools moving forward so that you can weather those highly stimulating and mobilizing situations, like being with a partner who provides frustration attraction through intermittent reinforcement, right? How can I weather this without succumbing to that heightened state of threat that I might have experienced in the past, right? So give yourself some time and space to calm the nervous system and to teach the nervous system new skills and abilities. Step 5, after step 5, there's only 2 more. I want you to create positive habits and routines, okay? So this is when goal setting can be useful. Now, goal setting is only useful if you feel good when you make them. If you're setting goals to beat yourself up with, then they're not very useful. Stop making them, right? Instead, focus on mindfulness and presence. But if you've got mindfulness and presence down, now you can start incorporating some goals if they feel good when you make them, okay? So focusing on your future can be helpful when you're going through a breakup, right? Because you also want to reframe the idea that you'll never have anything this great again. You want to reframe that to, there are possibilities for me in the world. And if I allow myself to process this sadness, that's going to open me up to the possibilities of what new things might come into my life, right? Rather than holding on to this sadness, okay? And then once you allow yourself to play with a goal, that feels good. Now it's going to feel good to start playing with what are the next action steps, start reverse engineering that goal. What are the tiny little action steps that I can take and feel good taking that are going to put me in a new direction, give me a sense of purpose, and kind of light me up with all the little, habitual successes that you make along the way, right? That can help you build your confidence and self-esteem and start redirecting some of that energy to something that is contributing to your sense of self, your sense of meaning, your sense of purpose. And so you start relying upon the X to define who you are and what your worth and value might be. Step 6, only 1 more after this, practice mindfulness and connect to spirit. Now, for those of you that are here, you know that I am a more spiritually minded person when it comes to these things. So when you practice mindfulness or you set the intention to connect to the larger essence of you, your higher knowing, your spiritual self, that is a powerful tool to help you get over a breakup, right? Because mindfulness involves being present in the moment and really accepting your thoughts and feelings without judgment. And that allows you to extract what meaning you must in order to move on from the experience, right? So mindfulness is easy as guided visualizations, meditation, deep breathing, all of the experiential activities you are doing in these programs. Any one of my programs encourage a level of mindfulness, right? And that just helps you to focus on being present in the moment, right? Connecting to spirit, I would also say that mindfulness is how we connect to spirit. And so when we connect to spirit, this is a more profound intention to experience what I consider to be the transcendent, right? And so when we are suffering in a breakup, it's usually because we're kind of narrowly focused on that person, that X, to be the sole focus of our love, of our desires, of our sense of connection. But when we shift that focus and instead set the intention to connect to our own life force energy, that of our own eternal spirit, and even the collective consciousness that we are all a part of, then over time, we start to realize that we always have access to connection because we are tapping into something that is omnipresent, regardless of what our relationship status might be. And that allows you to become more fundamentally secure within yourself and within any future relationship that you might attract. That's why in my programs, when I want to encourage you to develop a more secure attachment style, what I'm really asking you to do is connect with the essence of your spirit, with your more profound sense of self, rather than teaching you tips and tricks and ways of getting a secure partner to teach it to you, right? Because if you want a lasting sense of security, it stems from the relationship between you and you, and then your relationships with others will extend from that relationship between you and you. Now, the last step here is to connect with supportive people, right? This one's probably a bit of common sense, but when you're going through a breakup, it can be a very lonely experience. Sometimes we tend to want to hide our upset feelings from others because we don't want to burden them with how crappy we feel, but it doesn't have to be this way. We can reach out to supportive friends and family members, people that we connect with and trust that can provide some comfort and a listening ear. I would recommend reaching out to support groups or meetups or people who can connect with you, what you are explicitly going through, in such a way that they are supporting you in leaning in with intention, as opposed to groups that tend to get mired in a momentum that keeps you kind of stuck in that energy, right? We're leaning into the energy because we want to lean in with intention. We want to engage with it actively. We want to find out, what is this teaching me? What am I learning about myself? What is this telling me about the proximity between me and my sense of spiritual alignment? And the more we do that, the more that those feelings are going to release, and once the messenger has delivered the message, it's just going to go on its way. But if we hang out and we don't answer the door and we perseverate on these negative thoughts and feelings, the messenger is just going to keep knocking until we answer. Okay. So when I say connecting with other people who are going through the same thing as you, people who are conscientious and intentional with that. And I would argue, if you're here on this call or you are in our Facebook group and this online community, you are already doing that. So hats off to you. Okay. So I know that was a mouthful. I gave you a lot of information there. Going to pause there and just have you comment in the chat if any of this is landing with you, or if you have any thoughts or reflections. I would love to see that in the comments below. Just going to give you some final thoughts and summarizing what we just discussed. So final thoughts. Overall, these are the 7 tips that I recommend getting over a breakup, especially if you have anxious attachment style. Number 1, you want to learn how to identify and validate your own feelings, and just know and trust my feelings are valid no matter what. Okay. Number 2, you want to practice self-compassion, and this is above self-improvement. Number 3, notice the negative self-talk and intentionally try to reframe that. Number 4, cut off contact with your ex for at least a period of time so that you give your nervous system a break and you can have an opportunity to teach it new tools so that it can learn to weather stressful situations effectively for you in the future. Number 5, you want to create positive new habits and routines, right? Hobbies that light you up, things that you enjoy doing. Okay. And this could be things like setting goals for yourself, again, only if it feels good. If a goal feels good for you, it gives you a sense of purpose, a direction to move in, by all means, set those goals. If a goal is an outcome that you start beating yourself up with, it's not working for you, you're not there yet. Let it go. Okay. You're not getting a lower grade because of it, right? It can be helpful. If it's not, let it go. Practice mindfulness and connect to spirit. Okay, this is going to help you foster a sense of security within yourself, understanding that the most primary relationship that affects your attachment security is the relationship between you and you. And then once you have that squared, now in your interpersonal relationships, that security can grow and flourish. Okay. And lastly, connect with supportive people. A lot of times breakups are so hard because we put so many of our eggs in one basket and we hyper focused on one person to provide the most profound sense of connection that we might experience. But this usually stems from early attachment wounding, because when we are younger, our families are so small and insular until we become a part of a larger community. But the larger community is a mirrored reflection of the larger collective consciousness to which you belong. So it is time for you to start connecting to the larger community and experiencing connection on more mature levels, more sophisticated and mature levels. And once you open yourself up to that, you just feel connected all the time. Okay. You can connect to anyone, really. And so when we're able to follow these tips, then we can start to heal from the pain of a breakup and move forward with a lot more confidence and optimism, right? But one thing I would say, please just be patient with yourself. Give yourself a little grace, okay? Take it one step at a time. Don't try to jump ahead of where you are, because you'll boomerang back, right? So if you're in an angry place, be in an angry place. Anger can be a wonderfully constructive emotion that is self-advocating, right? Let yourself be there, because the more you intentionally allow that to be the case, the more the anger is going to move through you. It's going to give you its gifts, and it's going to be on its way, okay? And I truly believe that, breakup is a process, but with the right tools and the right mindset, you can emerge stronger and you can be more resilient than before. Especially if you're doing here and you're taking the tools that I have offered, you have the tools to help you on this path. Okay. Okay. So with that, I will wrap up this particular video. Again, would love to see your thoughts and comments in the chat. And thank you for your attention for this segment. Also, remember to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. I put out videos once a week and I wouldn't want you to miss out.